Vetiver Capital Research, part of Vetiver Capital Management, has released a report on the telecommunications sector of sub-Saharan Africa. The report is titled Delivering Growth Amidst Several Headwinds and looks at key markets in Nigeria, Kenya, Ghana, South Africa, and a number of others. We're going to be focusing mostly on Nigeria and hopefully get to Kenya sooner or later. Joining us to discuss further, Victoria Ejugwu, who is the sub-Saharan Africa analyst at Vetiver Capital Management. Victoria, very welcome. Good morning to you and thanks for joining us.
Good morning,
Two things, two growth drivers that your report mentioned: a rise in internet subscriptions, also, I guess, rise in teledensity or telephone users. Do those metrics contribute in a healthy manner to growth, as your report states?
Yes, definitely. So specifically, rise in data subscribers.
Okay.
Because we're seeing very strong data demand. So telcos have reported very strong double-digit growth in their data business. And so we expect that trend to stay put going forward. I mean, we have like a young demographic profile that's propping up demand for data. That's not expected to go down anytime soon. And so we expect that to continue to stay put going forward.
What about these telephone subscribers at 221 million, 8% growth according to the NCC? Is that also a driver as well?
Oh, well, that's more like mobile subscribers, right?
Yeah.
So mobile, voice, text. We expect to see more slower growth at that segment because what that means is 221 million subscriber means we have almost all the population being subscribed to mobile services. So there's not really a lot of growth to achieve in that segment.
Aha. Well, so yeah, because this is growing at 8%. Even the internet subscriptions, I think, is 6% growth. Yeah, there we go. So is there, I mean, are these encouraging at just single-digit growth for both of them?
I think the way to look at it is where we are now in terms of broadband penetration.
Okay.
So last year we're somewhere around 44%, and now we're 48%. That's progress, right?
Okay.
So exactly.
Okay, but so fine. That's I do want to touch on the broadband. I mean, considering the target is 72. I think the new administration, the target is 95, with a 48% broadband penetration. Are you encouraged by this? Because it's under 50. So I mean, if less than half of the population has access to broadband, and most of this I think is in urban areas, where's the optimism? I'm doom and gloom. You're optimist. So you convince me of the optimism here.
The optimism is for investors, right? So it means that there's a lot of work to be done in terms of increasing coverage rates. And what that means is for telcos, we will continue to see very strong growth. Focus for them has been to continually increase coverage. That's why we're seeing an improvement from last year till now.
Yeah.
So going forward, we should continue, although we typically would expect that it should rise at a faster rate. But again, like I said, where you see a challenge is where there's an opportunity. It just means that going forward or looking ahead, we should continue to see telcos post very strong growth in their business.
Does this also mean that we will see more investment from the telcos to expand? Because the broadband thing is them on this side. There's also the government side as well, right of ways and all this laying of cables across different states. Is there optimism on investment coming in from both sides, or are you more focused on investment from the telcos to expand broadband?
So right now, the government has tried to be very supportive in terms of encouraging telcos. And you've even seen some of them commit more capital to Nigeria here just because of the opportunity. So the growth will definitely come mostly from them rather than the government.
What about, speaking of government, the PSBs, the Payment Service Bank licenses? Your report touches on mobile money, and you talk about the growth prospects for mobile money. And it's very interesting, what the telcos can do in Nigeria versus what they can do in Kenya. Hopefully we get to Kenya soon. But what's your outlook as far as the mobile money side is concerned?
So mobile money in Nigeria has mostly been bank-led.
Yeah.
But yet our penetration rate is still low, below sub-Saharan Africa average. So it was until recently that the CBN stepped in to award licenses to these telcos. Because obviously they have the reach and they have the brand presence, so they might be in a better place to increase our financial inclusion rate. So for telcos right now, their focus is more on business expansion rather than profit. So they're looking to increase their agent network. They're also looking at acquiring customers. That space is becoming more and more competitive. We have the banks, we have the fintechs. So right now they're focused on business expansion, acquiring customers rather than profit. So for now, we're not expected to see any strong impact on their revenue. But it's also important to point out that segment of their business has also been fast growing. It's one of the fastest growing. So it's a more long-term thing, or a more long-term play for them.
Okay. What about headwinds? We've talked so glowingly about all the encouraging signs. What about the challenges that the telco players are facing?
Well, a lot of challenges, I'm sure. So aside the general inflationary pressures, we also have currency depreciation. Most of the equipment that they use are being imported. So currency volatility has affected them so much. We also have the security challenges. You have vandalism of infrastructure. So in some sort of way, that's affected their operations. But nevertheless, their margins are still within very healthy levels. So we can see that the sector is very resilient.
Yeah. What about 5G? So we could talk about 5G for the rest of the day. Is that encouraging as well? Because much of the country, there are parts where there's still 3G, 4G, maybe even 2 in some rural areas. So what's your, are you optimistic on 5G, expansion across the country?
Yes, very, very much optimistic. I guess the rollout is slow right now because we have just a few players that have gotten the license and have committed to commercial rollouts. Before this year, we just had one company that had started commercial rollouts, and it was just in select cities. But now, early in this year, we have 2 companies now. So the prospects for 5G is very strong. We expect that to continue to stay put. They'll continue to make investments. Demand for faster internet is on the rise. I'm sure you can relate to it.
I love internet, and I need it to be faster, yes.
Yes, exactly. Yes. So we're going to continue to see more commitments in that area from telcos.
Yeah, if you give me strong internet, I'm staying indoors for a whole week. Well, outside of when I have to come to work. But the USSD, the struggle between the fees, which according to your reports, $260 million over the last 5 years. Is this going to impact revenues for the telcos, this fight they've had with the banks on these fees?
So like you said, the money has been accumulated for over 5 years. But when you look at the fraction of that amount relative to how much telcos have raked in, we're looking at trillions. So that's a tiny bit of their revenue.
Yeah.
So it's not a cause for concern, especially for investors. But nevertheless, it's still money is being owed, and so telcos are the right way to, request
to ask for that. Yeah. All right, you did have a price target on MTN Nigeria in your reports. I think the stock closed at what was it, 265? Yeah, so 23% yet to date gain so far, and your target is 343. What's the justification for the increase, for the target, for the upside on the price target?
So like I said earlier, there's ample room for growth in the telecom sector. So MTN particularly has been posting very strong double-digit growth in the last 2 years. The operational results have also been very notable amidst all the headwinds that they've been facing. So what's driving the bullish valuation is we expect very strong growth for them next 1 year. Still strong double-digit growth, strong growth in EBITDA, and as such, we expect that they will turn in or rake in more or better profits this year.
All right, let's quickly get to Kenya, because this is a sub-Saharan Africa report you have. I always tend to talk about Nigeria so much whenever we have you guys talking about this report. Your overview for Kenya. It looks like, according to what you guys have, that you're positive on what's happening over there. What's going on in Kenya?
Kenyan market, I would say, is somewhat similar to the Nigerian market. Population of around 56 million. Their demographic profile, you have young natives that are propping up demand for data. And like I said, opportunity in that market is also very great. Penetration rates are still low. And we have sort of an oligopolistic market, a few players there. So we believe that there's going to be strong growth coming from there. Because telcos will continue to strive to cover the coverage gap. We have around 33% there for broadband especially, and then their government also has a target of around 80%. So we expect that telcos will continue to increase investment, increase coverage rates, and that means that they'll continue to post strong profits and strong growth in the mid to long term.
All right, now Safaricom is one of the stocks that you did highlight in your reports. When we think of M-Pesa and the mobile money improvements there, I think your so it's down 20%, but you've got a target price of 21 shillings there. It closed at 19 on Friday. What's the justification for the upside on Safaricom?
So I'd say Safaricom is like a value company, right? They're operating in markets with very ample opportunity. And more so, they just recently concluded an acquisition in Ethiopia. So they're expanding their services to Ethiopia. And Ethiopia is sort of like a virgin market because you've had the government run the telecom industry for so long. And because of that, there's not been a lot of growth. And then you now had the privatization. We recently had the privatization in Ethiopia. So Safaricom took on the opportunity and now are rolling out their service there. Subscriber base, Ethiopia is one of the largest markets, right? Population of 130 million, so it's just very similar to Nigeria. So you have like a virgin market where penetration rate is still low, but demand for the services is strong. And so because of that, we expect that Safaricom will continue to grow at a very fast pace in the mid to long term, and that explains why we're bullish on the company.
What about, I think you also mentioned Ghana and South Africa as well. Are they, I guess we can start with either one. Is there also, optimistic gains for the telco sectors in their respective countries?
Yes, definitely. I think one thing that's particular about all the telco sectors across sub-Saharan Africa is the fact that there's a huge coverage gap compared to other regions, Europe, America. So telcos are poised to gain from increases in demand for their services, right? So Ghana, you have coverage rate that's also very low compared to what is obtainable in Europe and America. So telcos are, striving and working at making investments to cover this gap, and that's why they've been posting very strong growth. Just like the Nigerian market, demand for data is strong, and so the data businesses have also been growing at a very fast pace. So we're also very optimistic about those markets.
That includes South Africa as well, because South Africa is the most industrialized country
definitely
on the African continent. So aren't they a little further ahead than your Nigeria?
Yes, definitely. You're right, Rotus. They're farther ahead, but data demand in that place, is very strong, right? We're in a digital era. Digitization is key, it's growing, and because of that, data business in that segment is also going to continue to post growth.
Now, you see, Victoria, thanks for the breakdown, though. We keep looking at the fact that there's this big gap as far as coverage, and that continues to be the reason for optimism to say, okay, there's growth, because it's such a large gap. The gap needs to be closed. But, considering where you mentioned the challenge, I asked you about the headwinds in Nigeria. You mentioned inflationary pressure. You mentioned currency volatility. Those same pressures are in the other
definitely.
South Africa, Ghana, and so on and so forth. So even though we continue to say that this gap is a reason to believe that there's optimism for growth, can the gap be closed when you think about the CapEx requirements to close the gap? Revenue challenges for government and all that. Are you sure the gap, I don't know how long, but is that reason really justified that gap can be closed?
So I guess the way to look at it is when you're thinking of making investments, right, you typically will do due diligence, you look at the trade-offs, right? The anticipated revenue that they can rake in from this market is expected to mitigate any risk that will arise from, currency volatility, regulatory challenges, and that's why investors are still key in bringing in monies into this market. So it's an attractive market, and they'll continue to make investments.
All right, my final question, we're out of time. Is the telco sector, because you guys also covered oil and gas and everything, is telco the hottest sector in Africa?
One of the hottest.
Hottest sector in Africa. Victoria Ejugwu, Sub-Saharan African analyst with Vetiva Capital Management, one of the authors of this report. Thank you so much for joining us to talk about the hottest sector in Africa, which is telco. Thank you so much.
Appreciate your time.